Hi there, guys. So in this video, what I wanted to do is explore the neuroscience of motivation somewhat and give some tips for self-management. So this is the fourth of the 4 neuroscience videos for this month. And I'm going to try and keep it short, and there will be a transcription available shortly afterwards. So one of the things about motivation is a lot of people talk about extrinsic factors of motivation. Like if there's a reward, we'll work hard for it, so we'll be motivated. But a wise trainer once said to me, the door to motivation has only one handle. It's on the inside. And this is absolutely true, because you can offer the same extrinsic reward to 20 different people, and it might only motivate one of them, 2 of them, etc. And when we talk about motivation in management terms, and we'll go into more detail on that when we look at managing and motivating others, we quite often focus on things like carrots and sticks without realizing that what we're actually talking about is the internal neuroscience threat and reward system that's inside our brain. So it makes sense that if we want to motivate ourselves, the more we understand about how that threat-reward system works in our brain, the more control we're going to have over this. Most of us learn to motivate ourselves through trial and error. We find out what works for us. So for some of you listening, this might explain what helps you get motivated. For others, this might explain why things that motivate your friends just leave you cold and don't excite you or motivate you to do anything at all. So what is motivation? Motivation is the turning of a desire into action. So it's not just sitting on your sofa going, I want to do X. It's going, I want to do X so much, I'm going to physically get up, change my state and do it. Okay? So in order to understand motivation, we need to understand the threat-reward system, because it is this threat-reward system which stimulates us into action. We either act to move away from a threat, or we act to move towards a reward. Simple as that. Now, fundamentally, that all happens in our limbic system. So it happens before any conscious thought. It happens before our prefrontal cortex gets involved. Now, there are a couple of things that I'm going to talk about first, and then we're going to look at some major facts, and then we're going to pull it together with some actions at the end. So one of the first things to realize is that motivation is strongly affected by memory. So what actually happens is the hippocampus, when we have a memory, our hippocampus remembers our feelings about that memory. Okay. Now, obviously, if there were strong feelings associated with that memory, it's going to be easier to remember. And incidents with strong feelings will be more easily remembered than ones with weaker feelings. So if our last memory of seeing a certain friend was of joy and excitement and happiness, when we remember that, we will have those feelings again in our brain, and that will make us feel positive about moving forwards and meeting that friend again. So first of all, there's an issue of what emotions have been associated with your memories. If the last time you met your friends you had an argument and it really upset you, then the next time you think of your friend, that feeling is going to come up and you're going to be less motivated to meet them. In fact, you might find yourself unconsciously doing things to avoid meeting them again. So at one level, motivation is about the feelings we had the last time we were in that situation or with that person, etc. Or the last time we had strong feelings about it. And therefore we either avoid the situation, so we're demotivated, or we move towards it, i.e. we're motivated. On a very simple level, if the last time I tried to do something was unsuccessful and upsetting and I got criticism for it, I'm going to be less likely to approach that situation again, and I'm going to avoid it. And this can happen at an unconscious level. So we might not even be aware we're doing it. This is quite often where a lot of procrastination comes from. Now, one of the things to realize is that the emotions are generally run in our amygdala, which is an incredibly primitive part of our brain. It's the reptilian part. It's that scary run. It's very primitive part of our brain. And our earlier parts of our brain have primary call on the brain's resources. So if our amygdala gets aroused with fear, it actually takes the resources that might otherwise be going to our conscious mind. Interesting. So have you ever been in a situation where you've been so excited about moving towards something, or so frightened or scared about something that you can't think straight? That's what happens here. It's what happens when people are on their horses, to be honest, and we're trying to teach them. They literally cannot hear us. They cannot process anything through their conscious mind because their amygdala is using all the energy, all the glucose, all the resources to manage what it perceives as a threat. It's become over-aroused. And this is one of the things that really gets in the way of motivation, is an over-arousal of our limbic system. It takes the resources away from our conscious awareness, let alone our conscious thought process. Now, interestingly, we don't often notice this because when we feel fear, the adrenaline makes us feel super focused and we think we're really on it. But actually, our conscious brain function's impaired, our decisions are much poorer quality, and our choices are much less effective. So it's that thing about we might feel as if we're focused and hyper alert, but in fact, we're not consciously processing information effectively. So if we're looking at the arousal of the limbic system, it reduces motivation and it reduces our ability to be motivated. We've talked before about the director that we have on our conscious mind. If the limbic system is aroused, it takes resources away and your director cannot function. Literally, there's not enough power to run your director, so your director goes down. The other thing about the limbic system when it's aroused, its whole focus goes onto danger. So you will notice risks and it leads to avoidance behaviors. You don't even notice opportunities. And what they've shown happens in the brain is that when you're over aroused in your limbic system, you start making accidental and incorrect connections. So a memory that might have been neutral before, now you're aroused, you will see all the risks in it. You will see someone raising their eyebrow and think they're criticizing me, when in fact they were amused at your joke. So you will start misremembering things when your limbic system is aroused and misinterpreting things. You've probably experienced this yourself before. Now, the other aspect of motivation is the biochemical one. Dopamine, more dopamine in your system gives you more motivation. Dopamine is the chemical that brings excitement and positive looking forward to doing things. Guess what an over-arousal of the limbic system does? Your dopamine levels plummet. Interestingly, your dopamine levels also plummet at times of hormonal disturbance like menopause, etc., which is why quite often menopause is an area when a lot of us go, meh, whereas previously we were doing really excited about things. So dopamine is a key neurotransmitter when it comes to this. Now, what can we do about this? I realise this is already a long issue, but most of us try and manage motivation with some very conscious processes like situation selection, okay, modifying a situation once we're in it, or deciding where we put our attention, what we focus on. All of these things we can do until our limbic system is aroused. Then we can't do them. So I can, when I'm in a good frame of mind, I can manage my situation so I don't expose myself to situations that demotivate me. A lot of us do this. We go, I'm going to get up and go for a run first thing, because if I wait, I'll talk myself out of it. So we change the situation. We select a situation. We can modify a situation once we're in it. A classic one for this is, I don't want to go and do anything with my horses. I'll just go up there for 10 minutes. If I still feel this way, I'll come home. And that's a classic for procrastination. I'll just do a first draft. I will modify the situation to help me overcome the block to my motivation. And the attention deployment is once I'm doing a job, when those thoughts come across about you're wasting your time, there's no point doing it, this isn't good enough, or it isn't perfect, I can go, I'm not listening to you. I'm going to focus on these things and think about how happy one person will be when I've done this job. And I'm going to choose where I put my attention. All of those require my director to be in operation. And once the emotions kick in, those options are actually pretty closed. So there are some things we can actually do. And the main thing we do to deal with motivation is we look at three things. One, we increase certainty in our lives. Increasing certainty takes away that anxiety and calms the limbic system. Uncertainty is the biggest source of limbic system arousal, and it triggers invariably an away from response, which blocks everything. So chunking things down. So for example, I don't know right now, I'm uncertain about how to design the whole course when I put it on the new system. What do I know? I know I can set up an initial menu system and make a start on the first pages. And I know while I'm doing that, I can listen to the tutorial videos and learn more. So I go from being stressed and overwhelmed about the whole thing to I'm chunking it down to something I know I can do well enough. Classic move. So by increasing the level of certainty, you will put the control back in your conscious mind. You'll be more motivated to do it. We are all more motivated to do things if we're certain and we have a perception of control about it. Okay. Now, part of this is autonomy. Having stuff we can actually control gives us more sense of certainty, which also then gives us more motivation. Autonomy is also about making choices. If instead of going, we have to do this, which makes it a forced decision, which can stimulate our limbic system into, is that a threat? We don't have control. If we can then go, well, there's three things I could do here. I could do the overall design of the system. I could start doing some videos to go on the system. I could start doing the transcripts ready. I can then choose one of those. That will also calm my limbic system down. So if you've got something where you feel that anxiety coming up and you can't think straight, or you're not motivated, you're procrastinating, chunk it down and give yourself choices. Okay. The third thing is cognitive reappraisal. Now, some of you have heard me talk about this before. This is reframing. So it's reframing. So, for example, people were shown a photograph of a group of people outside a church crying. Almost all of them felt sad, got aroused, because they assumed it was a funeral. When they were told it was a wedding and they looked at the same photograph, they didn't have the over-arousal and they were able to make good decisions on the exercise that they were doing. Isn't that interesting? So reappraisal positively activates, if you really want to know, it positively activates the right and left ventrolateral prefrontal cortex. So it actually stimulates and gets the prefrontal cortex going. And it decreases the limbic system. So there's a few ways we can do this. You can reinterpret, so decide what's a threatening event isn't. So I can say, well, it doesn't really matter if I don't do X. Boom, instant. That's reinterpreting. I can normalize. How do I normalize? By doing things again and again and again. So when you first started learning a car, limbic arousal up, hard to think straight, normalize it, practice it. Now it's easier. Okay, new things are always going to be a threat until we practice them. Okay, we can reorder things. So I can, if I realize that working by myself is scary, and actually I find it more motivating to work with others, right? Redesign my work, reordering things, reframe it so I work with others. Find a tribe, find people to talk to, and have someone to bounce ideas off. It changes it. and repositioning, which is literally looking at things through someone else's eyes. So, for example, I can have a big scary project to do. I can look and go, look, I know other people have done this. Can't be that difficult because they've done it. And actually, if I look at it through someone else's eyes, it's pretty amazing that I'm doing this at all. So, and it just calms me down. One of the big ways I use that is when I start negatively judging myself, which I find very demotivating. I haven't been perfect, I haven't done this, I haven't done that. I've just been ill and I haven't achieved as much as I wanted to achieve. If I look through other people's eyes and I go, look how much I have achieved. What would other people think if they were ill? So reframing that way helps put it in perspective, and it takes that threat element away. Okay, so basically reappraisal is the killer app for motivation. It regulates our emotions. It makes sure that our limbic system doesn't get over aroused. And it then enables us to manage our expectations, give ourselves choices, and focus on things that excite us and give us joy by managing our mental processes. Okay? Neuroscience and motivation, big subject. We'll revisit it when we talk about looking at other people. Take care.